"Step back!" barked SSG Elijah Brooks. The crowd froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Only the echo of boots on marble filled the plaza, measured, metallic, perfect. SPC Daniel Ruiz turned his rifle, stock to shoulder, eyes locked forward, each step a metronome of devotion. And then, the sound that should never be heard at the tomb of the unknown soldier, a rope snapping loose. Someone had crossed the line. Subscribe if you believe honor still means something, because this story isn't about a monument. It's about men who stand between silence and chaos. A murmur rippled through the tourists. Captain Aaron Walsh's voice cut through. "Sir, stop right there." But the man didn't. Evan McCallum, face tight with grief and defiance, strode past the velvet rope, hand clutching a crumpled photograph. "Don't you understand?" he shouted. "My brother's in there somewhere." His voice cracked through the sacred quiet like thunder. A camera clicked, a child whimpered, and still Ruiz marched, spine straight, rifle glinting in the gray light, duty unbroken, ritual undisturbed. 1, 2, 3 steps. Then the wind shifted. The protester was only yards from the tomb. SSG Brooks's eyes narrowed. He didn't speak again. He moved. One step, the step, forward. The sound of his heel striking the marble was like a rifle shot. The echo rolled across the plaza and seemed to freeze the world in place. Thunder cracked in the distance as if answering him. Ruiz halted mid-stride, eyes flicking toward his commander. Hale stood by the rope, trembling, unsure whether to move or breathe. Brooks's white-gloved hand lifted, palm outward. Not threat, not warning. Command. The protester stopped. For a long, electric moment, neither man moved. Rain began to fall in soft, sparse drops, darkening the marble, streaking the guard's cheek where no tear would ever dare. "Sir," Captain Walsh said quietly, stepping up beside him. "MPs are en route." Brooks didn't blink. His voice came low, steady as stone. "No one crosses the line." McCallum's jaw quivered. He was 19. They sent him home in a box with no name. "I just wanted to—" Brooks cut him off. "You will show respect, always." The wind surged, flapping flags against their poles like angry wings. The man's photograph slipped from his fingers, fluttering once before landing at Brooks's boot. A young soldier's face stared up from it, smiling, alive. Something in Ruiz's chest cracked, unseen. The crowd was silent now, utterly still. The sound of rain deepened, a hush of reverence washing over the marble. Even the protesters seemed to feel it, the weight of all those who never came home. Brooks slowly knelt, just enough to lift the photograph. He held it between thumb and forefinger, gaze unmoving. "What's his name?" he asked. "Corporal Aidan McCallum," the man said, voice barely audible. Brooks gave a single nod. "Then he rests here with honor." MPs appeared at the edge of the plaza, boots splashing through shallow puddles. Walsh stepped forward to intercept them, her mirrored lenses hiding eyes that glistened. Brooks turned, motion sharp, precise. "Guard, resume the post." Ruiz snapped the rifle to shoulder, turned, and began the slow, deliberate walk back along the black mat. Rain drummed on his cap brim. Beneath it, his lips moved in silence. The guard's creed whispered between breaths. The protester was led away quietly. No struggle, no defiance left. And when Brooks faced the tomb again, thunder rolled overhead, deep, resonant, final. He took one breath, then another, and resumed his watch. The camera flashes returned, but the moment had already carved itself into memory, that single, thunder-clad step when one man's discipline became the nation's heartbeat. There are places where words fall silent, where one step can stop the world. And at Arlington, that silence still stands watch. "I froze," whispered PFC Marcus Hale. The room was dim, bunker-like, brick walls sweating from the storm outside. Fluorescent lights flickered above racks of rifles, each one oiled and reverently placed. Below the tomb, the guards' quarters thrummed with tension. SSG Elijah Brooks didn't look up from the inspection log. "You didn't move. That's different." Lightning flashed through the narrow ventilation slits near the ceiling. Rain lashed against the stone like time itself, hammering the walls. Across the room, SPC Daniel Ruiz sat alone at his locker, his hands motionless, for once, as if even the twitch in his left hand knew better than to show itself tonight. The protester's photo had been folded into a pocket of his blouse. "He could have tackled Ruiz," Hale said, voice still thin, "or pulled something. I I choked. Brooks turned the page with surgical precision. A guard doesn't guess. He watches. He steps when it counts. Hale looked down. He always did in Brooks's presence, but his hands balled into fists. I've trained 18 months for this, practiced the cadence until my arches bled, memorized every inch of that plaza, and I still... Brooks closed the logbook. You think standing watch is about perfection? He said. No, it's about sacrifice. Lightning again. Thunder closer. You're not guarding marble, Private. You're guarding memory. Theirs. He pointed toward the stairs, up, toward the tomb, toward the names that weren't names. Ruiz stood, slow. The creak of his chair was the loudest sound in the room. I knew the name in that photo, he said. Corporal Aidan McCallum, Afghanistan, Sangin Valley, 2011. Hale looked up, startled. Brooks said nothing. Ruiz's voice was low, rough as gravel. We got hit crossing a dry riverbed. I was supposed to cover left. I didn't see the glint until it was too late. He took the blast. Silence. Just rain and breath. He died fast, but not clean. Ruiz looked straight at Hale. The medic was the one screaming his name. Hale swallowed hard. The protester. Was that medic? Brooks finished, arms folded. Ruiz nodded once. Evan McCallum. He wrote me a letter after the war. Said he couldn't forget what he saw. Said the army lied about where we were. I never wrote back. He stepped closer to the creed plaque bolted to the far wall. Tarnished brass, edges worn from generations of fingertips brushing it before each shift. Ruiz touched it now, fingers lingering over the words. My standard will remain perfection. He shook his head. You know what perfection means to a man who's buried friends? Hale said nothing. Ruiz's voice dropped. It means you don't ever let grief get sloppy. You don't let pain become disrespect. That man jumped the rope, but it was my failure that brought him to the edge. Brooks moved beside him, quiet. There are two kinds of weight, he said. The kind that crushes, and the kind that steadies your aim. Ruiz stared at the plaque, then, softly, steadily, began to recite the creed aloud. Hale watched, breath caught in his throat as the words filled the room, not shouted, not forced, but lived. My dedication to this sacred duty is total and wholehearted. Lightning burst behind them, silhouetting both men in stark profile. For one moment, they weren't soldiers or guards or survivors. They were shadows of sacrifice, etched in light and storm. In the responsibility bestowed on me, never will I falter. Hale took a step forward. His mouth began to move with the words, For the souls of American heroes rest beneath my feet. By the time they reached the final line, all three stood before the plaque. Brooks placed a hand on Hale's shoulder, just once. Next time you'll step. I will, Hale said, voice tight. I swear it. Outside, the storm broke, the kind that scrubs the air clean. Brooks turned toward the door. There's more to this story, he said. The protester's not done. Ruiz's brow furrowed. What do you mean? Brooks paused. He left something else behind, not just the photo. What? Hale asked. Brooks glanced over his shoulder. A citation, folded in the photo's corner, bronze star with V. The room went still. He didn't just see sacrifice, he earned it. And as they stood beneath the tomb they guarded, three soldiers faced the truth. Sometimes the line between duty and grief isn't just crossed, it's worn away by time, by silence, by storm. Subscribe to walk the line with them. That's him. Ruiz's voice was flat, staring at the image in his hand. The paper was damp, edges curling, corners soft, but the face was unmistakable. Corporal Aidan McCallum, smiling in uniform, a friend he'd buried, now staring back from a stranger's pocket. The visitor center was quiet this early. No tourists yet, just the hum of vending machines and the distant echo of a mop across tile. Rain misted on the windows, gray light bleeding in. Captain Aaron Walsh sat across from Ruiz at the small conference table, hands folded over a sealed envelope. Her mirrored aviators rested beside her coffee. We held the protester overnight. No charges filed, she said. Brooks made the call. Ruiz didn't look up. Why? Walsh exhaled. Because sometimes a man crosses a line, not to dishonor, but to beg for remembrance. Behind her, PFC Hale paced slowly, whispering the guard's creed again under his breath like a mantra keeping him steady. He stopped beside the wall map of the cemetery and stared at Section 60, the final resting place for many of Iraq and Afghanistan's fallen. "He's not crazy," Hale said. "McCallum, I saw his eyes. That wasn't rage. That was grief that never found a home." Ruiz ran a thumb along the photo's crease. "He said nothing when I sent Aiden home." "You weren't supposed to," Walsh replied. "That was never your burden." "But it was," Ruiz said. "Still is." He stood, walked slowly to the window. Outside, the flag hung low on the pole, damp with the storm's remnants. The sky had begun to clear, morning light catching the marble of the tomb just visible through the trees. "They gave me a name," Ruiz said, eyes distant, "a casket, a folded flag, but for him, Evan, they gave guilt, nothing else." Silence. Only the soft drip of rain from the eaves. Then, from the hallway, footsteps, deliberate, hesitant. The protester stood in the doorway, clothes clean now but wrinkled from sleep. His eyes were bloodshot. He held something in his hands, small, folded. "I wasn't supposed to be here," Evan McCallum said quietly. "I know that now." Walsh moved to speak, but Ruiz raised a hand. The two men looked at each other for a long moment. "I wrote you," Evan said. "After Sankin, I was angry, thought you froze." "I did," Ruiz said. "No defense, no excuse." Evan stepped forward and placed the folded paper on the table. "That's the citation. The V device, it didn't make it easier, just heavier." Ruiz looked down. Bronze Star, Valor, same unit, same hell. "They said I dragged 2 men out of the kill zone," Evan whispered. "But it should have been 3. "No one blames you," Ruiz said. "I do." Another pause. Then Evan pointed to the photo still clenched in Ruiz's hand. He wrote his name on the back, the day before we deployed. Said, "If I don't make it, at least someone will know I smiled once." Ruiz flipped the photo, scrawled in faded ink, "For Danny, you watch my 6, I'll haunt yours." The words hit like a body blow. Hale, silent until now, stepped forward. "We all haunt someone, don't we?" Ruiz gave him a look, surprised, then thoughtful. He turned back to Evan. "I stand post tonight," Ruiz said. "Midnight. Come back. Don't cross the rope this time." Evan's brow furrowed. "Why?" Ruiz held up the photo. "Because I'm going to carry him with me. But you should see him one last time." Evan nodded once, then turned and walked away, slower this time. The door clicked shut behind him. Outside, the clouds finally began to break. Ruiz moved to the sink, filled a small bowl, and gently pressed the photo between 2 clean towels, flattening it, drying it, preserving it. "Is that allowed?" Hale asked quietly. "What?" Ruiz replied. "Carrying a photo on post." Ruiz didn't look up. "It is now." He folded the photo carefully, slipped it into the inner pocket of his blouse, then turned toward the stairs. "Prep my rifle. Midnight watch." And that night, as the final tourists filtered out of Arlington and the shadows lengthened beneath the eternal flame, one guard would take post not for glory, but for a promise long unpaid. And somewhere in that vast field of white stone, one soul, long mourned, finally remembered, would rest a little lighter. "Post," Ruiz whispered. The word hung in the air like a breath too sacred to exhale. It was midnight. The tomb plaza shimmered with moonlight, silver on marble, shadows long and sharp. The air was dry now, storm-washed, carrying only the scent of dew and cut grass. And the silence? Unbreakable. SSG. Elijah Brooks stood at the base of the steps, arms behind his back, face unreadable in the glow of the plaza lights. PFC Hale stood behind him, just outside the chain, still in training whites, eyes locked on every movement like a student watching history. Ruiz clicked his heels. The M14 rifle gleamed under the stars. He took the first steps, precise, smooth, as if drawn by compass. 21 seconds, turn, rifle, pause. He moved like memory itself, but his heartbeat wasn't silent, not tonight. In his chest pocket, the photograph rested, weightless and heavy all at once. He hadn't told anyone, but he could feel it, like a ghost pressed to his ribs. Brooks watched from the shadows, every motion measured. He knew, but he said nothing. On the fifth pass, Ruiz paused longer than he should have, just one breath too long. Then, a sound. Not the wind, not boots, something softer. A shuffle. Movement just outside the rope. Ruiz didn't turn his head, but his eyes shifted ever so slightly. There, at the edge of the plaza, a figure. Civilian. Still. Evan McCallum. He stood beneath the trees just outside the chain, hands behind his back like a soldier at parade rest. No camera, no sign, no voice, just presence. Ruiz turned. Rifle. Step. 21 seconds. In that time, a man can remember an entire life. Afghanistan. The blast. The scream. The silence after. Ruiz's boot clicked again, behind the veil of marble, beneath the weight of moonlight. He kept walking, until something moved across the plaza, small, fragile. A single red rose, blown by the wind, tumbled out from the shadows and drifted across the black mat. It rolled past the tomb, past the path of the guard. Ruiz halted, not by command, not by reflex, by instinct. He stood at rest, rifle down, staring at the rose as it settled at the edge of the unknown's crypt. He didn't bend, he didn't speak, but his lips moved. A prayer, a name. The wind stopped, the rose stilled. Then, a voice from the dark. I never saw him fall. Ruiz didn't move. Evan's voice was barely louder than breath. Everything was screaming. Dust, blood, shrapnel. I reached him too late. Ruiz turned slowly, eyes finding the shadowed figure just beyond the chain. He smiled, Ruiz said, right before it hit. Evan blinked. He smiled, Ruiz repeated. You didn't fail him. You just remember him. A long pause. Evan stepped forward, one pace only, and raised his hand. The salute was crisp, unpracticed but heartfelt. A soldier's goodbye. Ruiz returned it, sharp, perfect, then resumed his post. The moment passed like a storm cloud parting, and then a sound broke the stillness, a whisper from behind the trees, not from Evan. Sir? Hale. Brooks turned. What is it, Private? Hale's voice trembled. Why does he keep coming? Brooks didn't answer right away. He looked up at the stars, then down at the tomb. Because we don't bury pain, he said. We bury names. The next steps echoed louder somehow. Ruiz had resumed his watch, but something had changed. No twitch in his hand, no tremor in his voice when he whispered the creed with each pass. He was not walking for perfection now. He was walking for peace. As the hour faded and the moon carved cold light into the marble, a single image would burn into memory. Ruiz standing above the rose, rifle at rest, eyes locked forward, and just beyond the rope, Evan McCallum, hand to brow, a silent salute crossing time, guilt, and war. Two soldiers, divided by belief, united by sacrifice. And the watch went on. The first note of taps pierced the morning stillness. It was just past dawn. A thin mist blanketed Arlington's slopes, curling around the white headstones like breath from the earth itself. Ruiz stood at parade rest, his uniform immaculate. The M14 rifle gleamed against his shoulder. This was his last watch of the relief, the sunrise ceremony. Behind him, the plaza filled quietly, a sparse crowd, mostly veterans. Among them, Captain Aaron Walsh adjusted the seating. A Gold Star mother clutched a folded flag in her lap. No one spoke above a whisper. At the plaza's edge, behind the chain, Evan McCallum stood again. This time, he didn't flinch, he didn't shout, he just waited. SSG Brooks approached slowly from the far side, boots echoing with authority. Hale followed in full dress, no longer a trainee, no longer whispering the creed, but carrying it now in his spine. Brooks nodded once. Permission to proceed. Ruiz turned. Aye, Sergeant. Brooks stepped forward. Guard, dismissed with honor. With that, Ruiz broke his watch. But he didn't leave. He marched to the base of the tomb, reversed his rifle, and held it vertical. Ceremonial rest, not just duty, reverence. The flag snapped once in the wind, red, white, blue against pale sky. Then came the silence. Hale approached him, a box in hand. Inside, the guard's identification badge, silver, numbered, earned in silence and sacrifice. Ruiz took it with both hands, bowed his head, then turned to the chain. For a moment, everyone watched as he walked. Not to the barracks, not to formation, but directly to the protester, to Evan. The crowd stiffened, cameras rose, but no drama followed, just two men. Ruiz removed the folded photograph from his breast pocket. The paper was worn now, edges softened by weather, sweat, time. He handed it to Evan. "I carried him," Ruiz said. "Now it's your turn." Evan opened it slowly. Aidan McCallum smiled up at him, forever 19. For a moment, neither man moved. Then Ruiz stepped back in a sharp, crisp, and raised his hand in a slow salute. Evan hesitated. Then he returned it. Side by side, soldier and protester stood before the tomb, one in uniform, one in civilian jacket, one bound by creed, the other by grief, both saluting the same silence. Behind them, Brooks watched, motionless but his jaw clenched. Hale whispered, not the creed this time, but a question. "Do we let them do that?" Brooks answered without looking away. "We don't let them. We need them." Hale blinked. "Sir?" "We guard the unknown so no one's forgotten," Brooks said. "That includes the ones who still carry the war inside them." From the flagpole, taps drew to its final note, and in that final breath, everything fell still. The wind stopped. The crowd froze. Even the birds held silence. It was then, the moment that would live forever. A single shaft of sunlight broke through the cloud line, landing on the tomb. The marble seemed to glow, not from above, but from within. And in front of it, Ruiz and Evan, shoulder to shoulder, hands raised in salute. No words, no conflict, just honor. Somewhere behind the ropes, a little boy whispered to his mother, "They're like statues." But the mother shook her head. "No, sweetheart, statues don't bleed." Ruiz lowered his hand first. He turned back toward the plaza where Walsh stood watching with her mirrored lenses. Brooks nodded once. The ceremony was over. But the watch? It never ends. Because honor doesn't sleep, grief doesn't vanish, and sacrifice, true sacrifice, echoes forever. Subscribe to carry the silence forward.